Hi, my name is Julie Bradley. I'd like to discuss with you now how we teach handwriting or lettering to your children. Okay, they have to have good body rhythm because when we write, we want to write with good rhythm and to be able to write fluently and efficiently. So it's that sense of rhythm that leads us into writing very quickly and carefully. We've talked about handedness and dominance being established. I'm just looking to really ensure that the child is using their dominant hand and not confused by what others are doing around them. Correct pencil grip we've discussed somewhat. So this is showing you a really good picture of a person holding a pencil correctly with the tall man underneath. I sometimes say these tall man and thumb are kissing underneath and pointer's on top hiding because he doesn't want to see them kissing. But there are lots of explanations that you could give, like, you know, the doormat and so on. These ones are showing some quite stressed joints, and you can imagine how tiring it will be for these children to write in a 3-hour exam or to really last the day of a 6-hour day, school day, with a good style. It's going to be very tiring to the whole arm and upper body. Okay, so we really need to develop in the child some good pre-writing concepts, and we do a lot of discrimination and completion work. So we might, for example, for a completion exercise, have a pattern such as this, and we might start it and the child has to complete it. So just looking at the letters, the shapes that our letters make, and being able to continue it. Discrimination, we may do a set of exercises where we have some D's and then a B, and being able to tell which one is different. So they learn to tell the difference between a D and a B and a P and a Q. So for some of our children that will be very hard because really all of them have a circle and a long stick. It's just the position of the circle and the long stick that makes the symbol say something different. So that's a D, B, P, Q, but for many of them they might just say it's a circle with a long stick and not relate it to, if they know one's a D, they might call them all a D or confuse which one is which. So what we're really aiming to do in the handwriting process is to make it automatic so that when we set a spelling or a reading or a writing or a maths activity, they don't have to think about holding the pencil correctly and getting the information down on paper. They can actually think about the maths or the reading or the spelling or the writing that they're meant to be thinking about. Now, most of us can only think of one thing at a time, and we rely on automaticity for the other things. So for our young children, they really need to have that automaticity. If they're thinking about the writing, they're not going to be so caring about how they spell a word or whether they get the number right in the maths. So that automaticity of movement is just absolutely essential. We need to make sure that they know the correct formations, the starting points, especially so they have a lack of reversals. So in the early stages, we teach them just the elements of the letters, which is things like just the parts of a letter, so a tall stick, a short stick, and a long stick. And we make sure that they know they've learned how to have it as a downward stroke for each of them. And then we teach them the other parts which get more complicated, like a hill and a cup and an open circle. So put some of those together to make the letters in our alphabet. So a tall stick and a hill would then become an H. Or a short stick and a hill would become an N. And so we very slowly take them through the parts towards handwriting. Teach them the elements, make sure they get these formations right. Where do we start? Have they learnt to pull towards the body? Many young children are having that reflex where they're shooting their arm out from the body, so many of them start from so they really should have learnt to pull towards the body for most of our letter forms. And it's through all these discrimination activities and through cueing how a letter is formed that will also stop that reversal problem happening. It is expected though that children may still be reversing occasionally into Year 2. Now it doesn't matter what names you give these elements of letters, so long as everyone at your school gives them the same letters. I've done a little handout for the parents with the names of the elements that I use at school so you can follow up at home. So I call the first one a tall stick, short stick, long stick, bar. I call it a hill here because we don't have a lot of tunnels in Perth. This is a cup. I call this a little hill, a snake, an open circle, a hook, a handle, and I call these ones slopes. So they're really all the elements of letters that you need to teach a child for them to cope with forming every letter of our alphabet. When you introduce cursive script, you have to teach 300 joins or tags on top of that. So this is making it very simple while they're learning the text. It's also very handy, I find, to teach a simple script like this because the script they're writing is actually matching the script they're reading, because there are very few books out there that have a cursive script in them for children to read. So that's why we teach this, just to make the whole process easier for them in the initial stages. Some of the things we don't want you to do is writing in the air. About 100 years ago, we found that that it was quite effective to write on big sheets of paper and transfer the information from the gross motor movement to the fine motor movement. But because paper got quite expensive, people decided to get rid of the paper but keep the writing in the gross motor movements happening. And it really lost its impact because part of the writing process is the visual feedback that you get from doing it. So writing in the air has no visual feedback. It's really, you could be doing anything. The child could be writing anything or you could be writing anything. So we don't do that. Rainbow writing we don't encourage either, and that's where a child gets every pencil out of their pencil case and they go over a letter over and over again with a different colour until you can hardly see what the colour is. If you're going out and buying any writing books, I would not recommend you buy any books that have channel writing in them, which is this sort of thing. Channel writing distorts the letter and it's very hard visually for a child to see what the actual letter is. Much better that you stick with the simple elements of the letters and teach them to put those together. So avoid, please, rainbow writing, writing in the air, and channel writing. Lots of tracing is great for young children, but not all the time. Don't continue it forever. So when they're little, tracing over pictures which might have dots which they have to join together, and as they start doing letters, giving them some, you can buy lots of little books with tracing exercises with simple letter formations in them. We always do it on lined paper, but really it's very hard for young children to cope with dotted thirds, so we don't use the dotted thirds. The only people who really need to use dotted thirds are calligraphers, and maybe if I'm doing a special chart for the classroom I might draw in dotted thirds to make it look perfect. But to expect that degree of perfection for a young child is probably putting a bit too much pressure on them. We do plasticine, confetti, sand, tray play, but not from teaching them how to write or print. That's more for dexterity and flexibility and for fun and a bit of muscle strength and control, but it's actually not going to teach them how to write. Making a letter in plasticine isn't going to teach them how to write the letter. So once again, we're really after automaticity to make the whole process easier so they can concentrate on the spelling, reading, writing, maths that they need to, and they're not distracted by what their body finds difficult to do.